Hi, everybody. My name is Itay Sharfi, and I am a professor, adjunct professor at Cal State Fullerton. I teach computer science, and I've also been in the computer science industry for a long time now. Most recently, I'm with Google. And I'm taking this session to welcome two of my students today for a mock interview that will be focused on resume. Together with me is Sonal. Hi, Sonal.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
And Akshay.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
So what we're going to do in this session, we're going to do questions about resumes. This is something that you will see a bit maybe less from larger companies, but this is definitely something that you will see more at smaller companies, especially if your resume is relevant. Now, as we are starting the resume, it's important to understand that companies would want to ask questions that are relevant for that company, again, if it's a small company. So maybe you can share with us what type of position are you looking for? So we will pretend we are the hiring company or the hiring manager. Sonal?
So, hi, everyone. I am looking for a software engineer position. Should I make up a fictional company, or it's just small to medium, and that's the role I'm looking for?
Back end, front end, what type?
Back-end software engineer.
Back end software engineer. Okay, what about you, Akshay?
Hello. So I'm definitely looking for a full stack developer role or majorly backend focused full stack developer role. So I can say like a backend software engineer.
Okay, so let's keep that in mind as we're asking the question. So the way that it's going to work is the following. As part of these sessions, I want to show you and I want to show students the importance of understanding the other side. When you come into interview, it's not about you. You already know who you are. It's about the other person understanding who you are and what are your skill set, what is your attitude, so they can decide if to hire you or not. So at this mock interview, we will do the exercise of both of you becoming the interviewer and interviewee and swapping in the middle. Now, I'm going to create a session where I'm explaining to you what are some things that me, at least, when I worked at smaller companies and worked in computer science, I was looking for some what's called signals. And then the other person will be interviewed. So in order to show the impact of not knowing exactly what this other person is looking for versus knowing what this other looking for, I'll ask one of you to start as the interviewer and the other person to maybe silence. I will do like a thumb up once you can listen again. So you can still continue seeing the video unless you like a really good lip reader. That should be fine. And then we will start the interview. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Who wants to go first as an interviewer?
I can go first.
Okay, excellent. So, Akshay, you will prepare your resume, send it to Sonal, and you will. I will thumbs up once you can join the conversation. Again, just mute maybe yourself and the audio, so we won't be able to hear what we're saying, just to demonstrate the elements of surprise.
Sure. I'm doing it now.
Excellent. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to see the resume and think about how does it look from the other side. So the first thing that you need to think about is, again, what type of signals are you looking for? So what it means in the end, the purpose of resume is to extract a signal. A signal means something that you care about that you want to evaluate this candidate on, okay? So here's some examples of signal that potentially I've used in the past in computer science. Again, large companies usually would not going to do that, asking about maybe particular about experience, but in smaller companies is very common. So the first signal I often use, use them, is areas of seniority and responsibility, okay? So seniority means, is this person a junior person, just an undergrad? What is their level? Can they hit the ground running? Do they have meaningful experience? So that's the first signal that I'm looking for. And the second thing that I'm looking for is responsibility. So that means what were they responsible on, what they led in the past. Because again, past behavior is an indicator of future behavior, and past skills is also an indicator of future skills. So that's kind of one side. The second is technical proficiency. Does this person understand, first, what they work on, and second, what we need? So if this person is a full stack, let's say they're supposed to understand database. Let's say they say, hey, I worked in database, I know database, here's a database name. Do they actually understand? Do they actually face some problem with database? Do they actually understand what it is? Or it's just a bunch of buzzwords that they just slap in the resume? The third thing is ability to do problem solving, critical thinking. So this is a classic STAR. STAR means situation, target, action, result. When a person talks about the project and talk about maybe about the challenge, you can ask them about the challenge. Do they understand what was the situation? Do they understand what was the target? Like, what was important really in this project? Were they able to problem solve it, or they weren't like really critical thinking, they just over-engineered themselves? So this is another dimension that I often look at. Another thing that I'm looking at is the ability to do adaptability and learning. So in adaptability and learning, it means this person has new technology. You will have new technologies at your company. How this person even picks up new technology? Let's say it's the first time that they met web servers optimization. How do they even approach it? Do they read? Do they ask? Do they kind of fall on their back and say, I don't know what to do? Help me. How do they deal with new technologies? Another thing is communication and teamwork. So we all know that software development is a team sport. It's crucial for people to understand their role in that team sport. So sometimes they will ask this as part of behavioral, but again, past behavior is a good indication for future behavior. So does this person, when they worked in a team, understood their role? Like, what were they supposed to do versus other people supposed to do? What was their role in that team? Like, for example, if this person worked in a team of, let's say, people that have done operations, do they understand what was their role in the grand scheme of 6 people that looks like they're doing something similar? So those are the things, again, I'm looking at. You can look at different things. It's very important, though, when you evaluate a candidate, take notes and evaluate them by signals. This is critical because it also helps compare. Usually when people get interviewed, they're not interviewed by one person, so by multiple people. So if you want to hire this person or do not want to hire this person, it's important to be able to articulate why. 2 more things I often use is first is quality control. So you can call it respect of the art or the craft or setting the bar or whatever you want to call it. How this person assess the quality of the work. Like, again, there is no like right answer. It depends on the style of the company. Is this person a person that everything has to be perfect and have processes around quality control? Are they okay with releasing stuff that is kind of buggy and not working? Do they understand quality at all? I mean, it's a general topic. How do they approach that? How do they approach that with their project? Now, the cool thing about project is that everything on the resume is a fair game. So what it means is that you can pick on any one of those things and ask them about how do they approach quality, and it's much better than using like some theoretical thing. One more thing is personality. When this person facing a challenge or an opportunity, how do they react? It's important, definitely on the higher levels, but also important when people are more on the junior side. So this is the first thing. So I would say map yourself the signals that you think are important. Whatever the signals are, those are your signals, but they kind of need to make sense for hiring. The second step, now that you have the signals, you need to extract them. So you need to pick on resume items that could help extract those signals. So, for example, previous job positions, okay, can be used to extract signals like what were the roles and responsibility and the team, significant projects that they had. A lot of students have it. They have like, like project section. What was that about? Was that serious? What have they learned from that? What was their achievement? For example, if they say, hey, I've done this research. Okay, you've done this research. Do you have a paper? Like, have you reached some conclusion? How the client reacted to that? What technologies you used? And why did you choose to use them? And what were some challenges? A good rule of thumb is that experience gets gained at complicated situations. So how complicated was it, and how were you able to deal with that complexity? Another thing is educational achievement. If they have some educational achievement they're proud of, you can always highlight that and ask, why or how did you achieve that? Oh, you graduated #1 in your class. Okay, like what was your strategy about that? That could reveal a lot about the personality, because there are many ways to achieve #1. And any type of specific skills or technologies, this is fair game. This is the point where I usually pick, 1, 2, or 3 technologies and see, oh, you said MySQL. Okay, cool. Tell me about a project you actually used MySQL. Tell me what you learned about that. What are some challenges? Have you compared it to other? Like, just to see if it's just the technologies that are listed, or they're just kind of there, or this person actually understand them. It's a good indication also for the other technologies that are listed. And the last thing is crafting questions, right? So you need to craft your question in order to probe into those items and extract the signals that you want. So, for example, on the job positions, right, you can say stuff like, describe a challenge you faced in this role and how did you overcome it, okay? And then you can follow up, what was your impact? If it's a technology, you could say, what's easy? What's challenging? What are the areas that were hard to learn? How did you improve now that you're an expert versus junior? Or what would you advise people coming in? I like to always ask people, whenever I said, give me something complicated in that technologies, and then they say something complicated, and then it's like, okay, explain it to an 8-year-old and see if that person really understands. So there's many tactics around that. Again, this is your interviews. I think it's important to see things from the other side. And you can ask things like probing question about learning or adaptability. Was that the first time that you used that technology? How did you learn that? Did you learn it on the job, or how? And and quality control. Like, what are some things, for example, that you've seen working and not working for quality in this project? So it's all over the area. So this is your interview. After this interview is done, I'll ask you for debrief. Take notes as you do it. So you will be able to justify, as in real life, your evaluation and the signals that you gather. Any questions?
Is it appropriate to ask, like you said, to explain technical concepts, because they may have used it on a project? So should technical questions be asked, or should it just be, how did you approach this new technology? How did you problem solve? So again, more behavioral.
Sure. So anything on the resume is a fair game. So that means you can ask question. Be aware that there is NDA, so we don't want this person to reveal like some secret stuff of his company. Now, going back to the evaluation, if you want to know and you want to ask situational, like, give me a challenge that you had here and how did you face it? That is very good, because again, going back to your signal, anything where you have a legitimate signal that you try to extract, and again, from a resume that was provided to you, and your questions, again, are legitimate, that's fine. And yes, if somebody's saying that they really understand networking, it's a fair question to ask them a question about networking, about where did you learn it, what was the challenge, some pieces about the technology. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, those questions are sometimes could get tricky. That's why, again, that's one of the reasons, tricky and inconsistent, because different people who have different resume. That's, I think, many cases why you would see this mostly with smaller companies that are more focused about what they need, and get maybe need less consistency across candidates. Any more questions? So once I have my thumb up, you take it, ask for the resume, present the resume, and ask your questions. And in the end, I'll ask Akshay how he thinks it went, and then we'll surprise him with how you think it went.
Okay.
Sounds good? Okay,
Yes.
so take it from here.
So I have his, before we start, I have his resume open. So should I still ask him? Can I like?
That's okay. We don't have to pretend like you don't have it. So, but if you can present the resume so people can just see.
Okay, so he'll share his screen. Show the.
You can share.
Or,
you can share. Yeah, you can share his resume.
Okay.
Because you're the one who's asking.
Yes. Okay. So, hi Akshay.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so I will share my screen so I could share your resume.
Sure.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So, hello everyone. My name is Akshay, and you can see my resume, I've been working for like almost around 5 years before joining my master's course here at Cal State Fullerton. So, in my prior work experience, primarily I was working as a software engineer, more of like a full stack developer for like a couple of firms, namely Perion and then Oracle before. So, my main work was related to developing various modules, whether those are in backend or in UI or as well as database units, and taking care of their end-to-end life cycles. So I've done various uh, sprint ceremonies and even like similar user stories on the same. Currently, I'm pursuing my master's at Cal State Fullerton, and I'm basically uh, getting my skills better at hands, and I'm working on my new tech skills. That's brief about me. Yep.
And so, what kind of role are you looking for with my company?
Sure. As I'm getting graduated this semester, and I'm actually looking for full stack developer roles or software engineer roles, majorly focusing on backend and API developments.
Okay. And so, can you tell me more about your recent experience at Perion, India, and what role you had there, and what did you do?
Sure. So it was the recent full-time work that I was doing at Perion India Private Limited before joining my master's course. It was around 1.5 years as a software engineer there. And the core product they had was clinical genomics workspace, which was into a next-gen sequencing product working on various reports for like cancer pressure treatment. So my work was into the project as a software developer, working on the user stories, mainly focused on uh, developing end-to-end user solutions, like having the data that has been uploaded into the pipeline. So they have a specific pipeline where the data ingress is happening, and the data has to be taken from there and has to be passed with various other data sets, and there has to be converted. And there are a lot of logical operations has to be done on that. They have like a rule set thing. So as a software developer in a team of like seven to eight other developers, I used to take care of the incoming user stories, build new features. That features might be related to some sort of API development, or maybe user-facing UI changes, like modifying a functionality of a button, or maybe adding pagination to some pages. So this kind of features were there. So that was like quite fascinating role that I have been like doing for almost a year and a half.
Wow. And can you tell me more about the technologies that you used, for example, when you were developing the RESTful APIs and making the UI changes? What were the technologies involved behind this development?
Sure, sure. So the tech stack was quite flexible. There were like a couple of verticals. Like there was a project which was built using Spring Boot as a backend. Uh, so and the UI was mainly done on a couple of things. One was Groovy on Rails. The other one was Angular, uh, the latest Angular. So there was other project that I had to like got a chance to work on, was built using Node.js, like there was a flavor of Node.js, Nest.js that has been used, and the UI again was on Angular. So that was like the UI and backend, and all of the solutions for hosted on AWS. We used to have like a couple of AWS services quite often used, like S3, Secrets Manager, as I said, API Gateway we used, and even the database. We used to have a MongoDB database for all of the solutions because it was like the most favorite one over there, and it was like serving quite well. So this was like a couple of things we've been using.
Mhm. And did you face any new, like, were these technologies that you already had experience with, or on the job, did you have to learn some of these new technologies? And if so, how did you approach that?
Great. So in my previous experience with Oracle, I was mainly focused on Java tech stack. Like I was familiar with Java, Java servlets, maybe Spring Boot as well. But the node-based stack, the more focused stack with JavaScript, TypeScript was quite new for me. I couldn't like had like previous experience on that, but few of the project that I was exposed to, I was in need to learn those skills as well. So there were like a couple of things I would really appreciate about Period, that they used to organize like a lot of hackathons over the weekends so that developers can basically participate in that and they can learn new skills or brush up on their skills. So one of the hackathon I did participate during my first year at Period, and luckily I got like second runner up prize. Like we won like almost $400 just over the weekends. I was so happy. So that was one of the things where I learned Node.js, how to deal with like Express.js framework. So I believe like if I know the concepts, I can basically deal with a lot of other frameworks. So even Java tech stack, that was I already knew, but JavaScript and Nodes based things I got to learn over there.
That's great. And then along with those hackathons, so when you didn't have hackathons and you were working on your user stories, did you come across issues like with the new technology? And if so, how did you approach overcoming that obstacle so you could learn it and complete your task?
Sure. So yeah, I did come across such challenges a couple of times during my sprint over there. Like as I told you, there was like two instances of the UI application. One of those was like based on Groovy on Rails framework, and is like quite similar to Java, but was little different for me. And once in a user stories, we had to basically deal with a lot of incoming data on the UI, and there was a need to introduce pagination over there. So the Groovy on Rails existing legacy app was older version, and the new pagination module that I had to basically implement in that part of code was not compatible with it because it was like deprecated. Either I have to upgrade the version, or either I have to basically tweak around the code and get the pagination done over there. So it took me a while, like at least a day or so, in order to just get a match up with what all things do I need to modify, or should I be having like a different utility class where I can basically implement the newer pagination, and that should be included in the existing class or existing flow. So yeah, there were like a couple of challenges. I did get help from LinkedIn Learning, or like other peers of mine, senior tech leads. They were like quite helpful, and they shared some of their time, but all with collaborative approach and my self-learning after office hours. I think I was able to deal with those problems, and I did successfully implemented pagination over there, and that like highlighted over my resume. Yeah.
Wow, excellent. And then I see in your publications and achievements, you've mentioned, the second winner prize and the annual hackathon. So what was your role in that hackathon with the team that you were with? What role did you take to get to winning second prize?
Sure. So it was quite fascinating because, as I said, hackathons were one of those boosters. We used to learn like new skills over the fly over the weekend. So this was the first hackathon I did participate in Period, and there were like three people in a team. So me with my team lead and other friend of mine as a developer. So we divided our tasks, and the team lead was taking care of the AWS Lambda function, which was basically dealing with the pipeline. So the problem statement was mainly focusing on curating a variant database. So there's a variant data set, and there's a huge data that has to be queried every time the new report is triggered. So the problem statement asking us to modify the data such that the end user can basically save that time with the pre-computed computations. Like there are n number of computations. So my role was mainly focusing on the UI side, whereas the other teammate of mine who was a developer was working on the backend APIs, and the team lead was working on the Lambda function, which was dealing with the DAG, like the steps in order to clean the data, which data has to be eliminated, and how the data computations would be done faster. So I did developed Angular-based web app over the weekend, and all the endpoints which were exposing the data, I did show them up on UI, and I added a lot of filters, pagination, and even data inputs from the end user. If there's a new incoming data, that has to be validated on the UI itself, need not to validate on the backend. So all those feature part from the UI, and I was responsible for in that hackathon.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Akshay. It was wonderful to go through your resume and learn more about your experience. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sonal.
Oh, I think you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Okay. I wrote some things, but first, let's go by order. Akshay, how do you feel it went?
I feel I was quite a little nervous in the beginning, but as the interview progressed, I was getting more confidence on my answers, and definitely the answers, the questions were all from my resume. So I knew I was like I'm able to answer those. I think it was quite well for me. I'm happy with it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Sonal. So you had like your signals, whatever you thought is useful, and the question's purpose was only to extract them. That's the purpose of the interview. Hopefully with some factual backing. What do you think?
So the signals that I was looking for was how did he approach technologies that he may not have been familiar with, for example, at his most recent company. And then again, how he was as a team player with the annual hackathon to get to winning second prize winner. So I felt that I had to probe more into getting him to talk about what I was looking for. And there was a lot of buildup to getting to the point. So he would talk more about the technologies that were involved. But then when I asked how did he approach it, the answer of I use LinkedIn Learning came much later. But I think he was trying to get there. And then once he finally got there, I got my answer. Okay, he used LinkedIn Learning. But I think I was hoping to see some more signals that I may have asked my team members for help, or any other approach to show that, yeah, he can tackle new technologies and finish up his user stories if he was facing any challenges. And then with the annual hackathon, since my signal was working with a team, what was his role, and how did he get to helping that team win second prize? I think I didn't really get the answer of like how did they win second prize. Maybe he could have said more of how did his project differentiate from the other projects involved. So it could have shown something of what was unique or special about his project. But I did see that he did talk about his role, which was front-end development. So he did mention the division of roles between the team members. So that showed that he took ownership of his tasks, which was a positive sign for me that, okay, if I give him a task, he could complete that. And at least they won second prize, which means that there was hard work involved in that project.
Yes. Anything else that you noticed?
I think a lot of build up to getting to the point was the main thing that I noticed, as in terms of when he's giving his response. Are you looking for maybe just reading the resume, or what his responses were?
That's okay. That's okay. No, I think you covered them correctly. So I have 3 feedback points that I've noticed. The first thing, from the hackathon and from other ways that you talk about things, it looks like you are passionate for what you're doing. Passionate and has the ability to learn. So that means that me, if I would look into that, as somebody who's a hiring manager, and yeah, maybe you don't know exactly this technology and exactly this and exactly that. I'm like, okay, he's gonna go over some weekend and go and learn it, or on the day and figure it out. Like, you actually care about doing stuff. So that is, I think, the biggest positive, because again, you can learn stuff and care about learning stuff and care about your project as you talk about them. It didn't feel like kind of passive distant from your project, but you go in and you figure it out. The second thing that I want to highlight is regarding the seniority of the experience. One of the things is that the topics that you're suggesting of dilemmas were pretty junior. So, for example, when you talk about stuff like UI validation or pagination as a challenge and things you overcome, I'm not saying that those are not problems. I'm saying that it's not like an architecture problem or performance problem or some other big thing. So it appears to be more on the junior side, which again doesn't mean that a hiring manager would not want to hire you. It just means that when they're thinking about leveling, that might level it down, because again, the type of problems that you're highlighting are more on the junior side. So that's the second. The third is about communications. I agree with Sonal as listening from the side. It's how to extract signals. So what it means is that when you are answering, there is two things. The first is you don't DFS it. You kind of BFS. You go like this, and you're just describing all the details. But sometimes it needs to set up like more of a context or more of a story about that. So also for me, listening from the side, it was a bit hard to extract the signals. Now, why is this important? It's important because by default, mostly you're not hired unless there are signals to hire you. So but by default, if somebody is sitting from the side and they cannot say yes, it's a no. So it doesn't mean it was a no. It just means that somebody who's listening might not, it might not be a yes. And I think it's a combination of two things. I think the organization of the words, like it's kind of a lot of details, but it was very hard maybe to track. And the second thing is that I think the velocity of the words was high. So it was also how to track. So this is something I think pretty easy to fix. It's just like practicing. If it's like STAR, like I said that a lot, like situation, target, action, result, just a bit of a context. And you can always stop and say, what do you want to, which part you want to learn more about, something like that. Or, that's just a matter of practice. So I think those are the three things. I think overall it's positive. Again, maybe more on the junior, but positive with some tweaks maybe to communication. Make sense?
Sure.
Cool.
Yep. I think that's helpful.
And I think that's now, after you saw how it feels from the interview side, now you're going to feel how it's going to be from the interview side. Now, since Sonal already went through the training, she can stay. So I'm going to do a similar training for you. You're going to get a shorter version, just because people who see the video don't want to duplicate of the exact same information. But here's the thing. When you walk into a resume, it's not about the resume. It's about signals. So you want to evaluate this person according to some dimensions, some signals that this person had, if they're going to be good or bad for this position. So you need to keep the position in mind, and you need to keep the ideas of what are you looking for. So always remember, what are you looking for? Because all the purpose of these questions in the end is just to extract signals. Because remember, if you don't have signals, then the answer is a no. So even if you make it difficult on this person on the question, and that helps to extract the signal, that's perfectly fine. And remember, the resume is a fair game. Now, the person have bullets and stuff, so you can ask about them. So let's go through the process. Number one, define your signals. So defining the signals is seniority. In seniority is how senior this person is. What is the level of problems that they dealt with? I mean, you've seen this, right? The second is their responsibility. When they work on a team, what were they responsible for? The third is technical proficiency. So when this person works with technology, do they actually understand them? Are they actually technology proficient or architecture proficient? Again, it's a software engineering position, right? Next is problem solving and critical thinking. That's, I think, something that we talked about, like how this person think. Like, say they had a problem, let's say pagination. How this person think? How do they approach it? How do they solve it? Can they communicate that? Can they explain the challenge that they were facing and how they're addressing them? Do they understand the challenge clearly and can also address it? Like with pagination, do they actually understand what the challenge was? Can they actually understand the different options and how do they address it? Another one is adaptability and learning. If I throw somebody on a new technology, like can they improve? Do they master existing technologies as time goes on? How do they become better in that? So that's another signal. Another signal that you might be interested in is communication and teamwork, how this person fit within a team, how they work within a team. Quality control. Does this person cares about quality, the quality of the product, the quality of their craft? And if they care, what do they do about that? So that's another thing. And just in general, personality. If something doesn't work, how this person react. So remember, the purpose of this interview is to extract those signals. No need to be easy or difficult. It's just get that type of information so you can evaluate that according to dimensions. Now, your dimensions, you're the interviewer here, your dimensions might be a bit different than mine. That's perfectly fine, as long as you have objective dimensions that you can justify why this person need or do not need to be hired. Those type of hiring, again, it's less common in larger companies. It's much more common in smaller companies where you want to really understand if this person can fit in a role. Remember, larger companies, there is a pool of roles, so you don't actually know exactly what it's going to be. Also, larger companies try to be consistent in who they hire. So when you ask them questions about resume, it's very inconsistent because people come with different resumes. It's very hard to put the same answer, the same question, right? So it can be more biased here. Okay, after you have these signals, then you select the resume items to focus on. You might have previous job positions. You might have some project at the university. You might have some educational achievement or skills or technologies. Anything on the resume is fair game. If it's relevant to extract the signal, just ask it. The only thing is, again, don't push the person to go into NDA topics. If there is something that's specific, if somebody overcomes some problem with technology, it doesn't really go into the business of the company too much. So it's important to not push too much on the NDA because, again, that person is still responsible for that. Then the third the third part is crafting the question. Okay, so you know what you're going to ask on, and you know why you're asking this. Very important, why you're asking this. Then you go into the questions and maybe some follow-ups. For example, if it's a job position, you might say, what challenge did you have working in this project? And maybe how you overcome it and what was the impact? If it's technology, you can always say, explain to me this technology, explain to me how it's used, what's good, what's bad about this. Maybe if you know other comparison, just see how much this person actually know the technologies that they're listed. If it's something like, learning new technologies, you can just say, how do you approach new technologies or how did you learn it? Kind of similar to what we do with you. And if it's quality, you can say, hey, tell me some best practices. Or tell me something that you thought it's a best practice, but did not work. By the way, people with experience, it's always a better, people with experience, it's about, tell me something you thought will work and did not work. Because as you have more experience, there's more things that kind of sound good on paper. But once you try to implement them, it just kind of blows up. So that is something quite important. So it's your interviews. So she also interviewed. You will also see the difference, maybe that Sonal now, she knows what we are looking for. So it's going to be a bit easier for her to try and give us this. Because remember, if the signals are not there, the answer is usually no. So it's important to provide the interviewer what they need. Any questions, actually, before we start? Oh, and present the...
Sure.
Yeah, this time for our listeners, Sonal, she's was a bit old-fashioned here, so we don't have the resume, but we're going to do it based on LinkedIn. So you get 2 different types of reviews for the price of 1. So actually, let's do
Let's
that.
get started. Sure.
Yes, go for it.
I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, you can share the LinkedIn of Sonal and start asking question. Get your signals.
I think I don't have like sharing access. Can Sonal share the screen, please?
Personal, you can share.
Okay. Okay, so this is my LinkedIn. My experience most recently at Dassault Systems. I was on
Oh wait,
an
nobody asked you.
okay.
Yeah, I'm
I
starting.
just
Yeah, sure.
because you can't
Alright.
see it unless you scroll through it. That's
Yeah.
why
I did.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah.
started. Okay.
I was
Sorry about that. I could-
explaining everything just to give an overview before we start. If that's
Alright.
what you want.
Sure.
Oh,
I can
no
get
problem.
started.
I thought, okay, I thought you just go in without the question. You started without the questions, but that's okay. I can see my screen. I can see myself like about 10 times. So yeah, go for it. You can talk a bit about. Let's pretend you were asked. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'll get started. Hi Akshay. Hi everyone. So I am a master's student at California State University Fullerton, mastering in computer science, with my expected graduation date for May 2024. And alongside that, I am a full-time software engineer. And so I began my career as a supplemental instruction leader for our computer science department during my undergraduate years at, again, Cal State Fullerton. Alongside that, I was a Microsoft student partner where I represented Microsoft's technologies at Cal State Fullerton by hosting workshops for our students. After graduation, I started my full-time role as a software engineer for Sage, where I developed business process solutions for Sage X3, which was their business management solution for small to medium-sized businesses. And then most recently, I am a software engineer for Dassault Systems. And during my time at for my master's in computer science at Cal State Fullerton, I partook in an independent team project where I was a cybersecurity engineer for Disney, but it was a team project for our computer science department.
Sure. That was quite a brief introduction, and that was quite impressive that you've been doing a lot of roles in your previous experience. And I can see in your recent experience, you're working as a software engineer and consultant at Dassault Systems. But here at that organization, I think you've been planning to work as a backend engineer, or that's what you're applying for. That's right?
Yes.
So I would like to learn more about your current role that you've been doing on Impala data migration tool. So like, can you tell me about your role in the team? What kind of like things do you do on daily basis? Can you walk me through that?
Okay. So Impala is a custom data migration tool for the 3D experience platform within Dassault Systems. And Dassault Systems is a company that builds 3D software like CATIA. Recently, they acquired SolidWorks, which is under them. But their whole business is around creating and working with 3D objects. And this 3D experience platform is how teams can now manage their communications between each other. So individuals, each person would have their own account. They could write up issues like user stories, tasks. They could coordinate with all the applications to just get the team working. So it's similar to what Atlassian does with Jira. The 3D Experience platform is the Dassault Systems version of getting teams to collaborate. And the Impala data migration tool is a tool where our customers can migrate from previous versions of the platform to newer versions of the platform. So this data migration tool is to automate that migration process. So my role in building this Impala data migration tool is to add support for the different data types that are hosting for the 3D Experience platform. So for example, we may have manufacturing objects that are stored in the database, and now we need to extract that manufacturing objects and we need to import it into the new platform. Adding support to work with the manufacturing object type is now something I would build into Impala. So any types, like, for example, working with an issue, which is like a user story, I can write up an issue. That is something that a customer would put into their 3D Experience platform. And now when they want to migrate to the new platform, we need to take all the issues that they have and put it into the new platform. So adding support for the specific data types is my role as a developer for the Impala data migration tool. Mm-hmm. And with that, I worked with several technologies. The Impala tool is developed in C#. So that's the language I use to build my features and work with my tasks. And I interact with RESTful APIs because as we migrate the information, we're migrating, the 3D Experience platform has web services, RESTful API web services. So I interact with them to import the data into the destination platform. And then I work with that ETL pipeline, extract, transform, load.
Understood.
So taking the data, transforming it into being able to store in Impala's data lake, and then loading it into the destination platform. So overall, my role
sorry to interrupt, I understand. Like that was like quite overwhelming. Like Impala data integration tool, you've been working on a lot of things like extraction, transformation, loading, as you said, and even on object storage and stuff. So and I understood like your role as well. So being into this role, I think that's quite different role than your previous experiences, like being into some security engineering role and even the other role that you've been doing previously. So while getting into this new role, did you face any challenges as the new things that you might not know before and that you got to learn when you joined this? Can you talk about that more?
So prior to joining Dassault Systems, I had experience with Java, and working with the Impala data migration tool, I had to learn C# because that was the programming language that was already being used to develop this tool. So getting ramped up to speed to become that productive developer, that was an independent learning that I did myself, of ramping myself up and getting familiar with C#. So I was reading books of C#, practicing some coding of my own, just to get familiar with the syntax of that. And along with that, ETL, or just data migration in general, was a new concept to me because at Sage, I was primarily focused on building business logic. But now it's actually working with the database and working with migrations of them. So this ETL and data migration was a new concept for me, but my mentor, my senior engineer on the team, he was a great resource for my help. So with him, I would ask him questions. I would try to understand this concept. And whenever I had any questions or issues, I would talk to him about it, get some clarification. And then that's how I ramped up my learning and became that productive developer.
Yeah. So in the earlier days of your Dassault System experience, while you started working on the new tech, Was there any scenario where you were stuck on your user stories and you had to like propose some solution, but you were like not able to find a way out? So how did you tackle this kind of problems if you face?
So yes, so when I was initially when I initially got started with the Impala data migration tool, I learned how many components this tool is actually broken down into. We have it's kind of following asynchronous processing. So we have the producer, the message broker, and the consumer. And then we have many other several other components like web services that actually interact with the 3D Experience platform's web services. So initially, when I got started, when I was trying to, for example, like manufacturing object was one of my first types that I needed to add support for. And I saw how many components I had to actually make changes into. It wasn't a monolith. It's not a monolithic application. It's broken down into many components. So in order to make sure I am taking my task and adding my changes in the right components, that is something I worked with my mentor, my senior engineer with, so I could understand, okay, I'm making my changes in the right direction. So having regular calls with him, sharing my ideas with him, following like pair programming approach, which was advised by my mentor as well, but taking that proactive role of asking questions, talking about my ideas, and getting feedback with him was how I approached completing these new features and making sure that I'm making my changes in the right components and that it's not affecting the existing architecture that was already designed for this tool.
Sure. One last question, like while delivering these things on like feature, did you get any chance like to lead a complete like feature development or like design a feature solution? So have you ever got like any situation into this kind of things?
Yes. So all the types that I imported or that I added support for within the Impala data migration tools, those were all features that I had full ownership of. So manufacturing objects, issue types, logical systems, bookmarks, all these types that we store within the 3D Experience platform, adding support to actually migrate that from a source platform to a destination platform, those were all my tasks. So I had complete ownership of them. I was responsible for making sure that they're coded correctly, they're tested correctly, they finish the acceptance test, they actually import successfully into the destination platform. So those are all my my tasks that I had to complete, my features that I had full ownership of.
Okay, I think that was great. Like I could get my signals. Sure. Thank you so much for having.
Thank you, Akshay.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. And how do you think it went? Well, for the Sonal.
Oh, okay. I felt it was good. In the initial, as I was talking about my role at DS, and then Akshay was trying to signal me that, oh, okay, I can stop now. So that was, yeah, I noticed that. So that was something I could focus on, is making sure as I'm explaining my role, I try to shorten it down because I know he has some probing questions he wants to get into. So that was something I noticed. But I hope that if he was asking kind of my ownerships, like how did I tackle any issues and what were my responsibilities, I hope that I answered those correctly because I mentioned which features I had full ownership of and how did I go about learning when I initially joined, which was working with my mentor.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Not from my side.
Okay. Now you had your Akshay, you had your signals. You're the hiring manager in this exercise. By the way, I like the fact that you ask the questions directly. I mean, I wouldn't say like, you don't have maybe experience for that, but I like it that you ask, kind of, at least on the first one, kind of straight to the point, what was your role or something like that, so we can hear that at the recorder. So how do you feel it went?
Yeah, I think it was quite maybe a lot of detail-oriented talk that I had with Sonal. Sonal was explaining the tool, her role in the salt systems, and the way she was dealing with her new role, because previously she wasn't into ETL. She was into like other roles, but she basically got into the role and then started learning it. So a couple of points I did note that she was adaptable. She got into the like new skills and took a lot of resources. She's resourceful. About seniority, I think she was maybe a junior engineer or as a mid-level engineer in the team. There was a lot of other peers and seniors that were there to help her in a lot of issues. And she was also more into client-facing, or maybe talking with client, supporting them with their user requirements and dealing with their data requirements. So I think that was one of the things. About teamwork, I think she's pretty good. She always reaches out to like her teammates if she's stuck in any user stories or she needs a discussion. Uh, Quality control, she's pretty good at it. She always takes a review from her peers. Peer programming, she's actively participating into, and she cares about the quality of the code that she's doing. And she has always, like a couple of times, she has already mentioned this one. So these were like positive signals I see from her. Even technical proficiency, she was a lot of talking about like object data storage and a lot of I think I don't remember something related to frames and conversion of the data. So I could ask her more about that, but she explained well about ETL process. But the role that she was trying to apply to was a backend engineer or maybe software engineer, which was more towards like RESTful services, their architecture, how do you expose endpoints, how do you take care of the data coming from the service, how do you manage the data, how do you reach out to database. So I think that could be the big of the elephant in the room, and the ETL might be the rest of the piece of it. But we should have been talk about more on that, like why this database, how do you store the data. But I think given the time limit, we were only able to discuss only the rest of the parts. So I think I might be like maybe 3.7 or 4 on the scale of 5. You were like pretty good at whatever you said, and there were a lot of green signals. There might be few more signals that I might think of assessing you on the technical skills, but as an individual, as a person, and the way her communication skills is great as well. Few more feedbacks, like she can trim down the answers and basically limit them within a minute or a minute and a half, so that interviewer can basically focus on the rest of the questions. So I think, yeah, it was like pretty good. I think, yeah, she's good.
Okay. Anything else?
I think, yeah, I have summed up my review.
Okay. So let me say maybe a couple of things that I noticed that might be helpful. Again, we're coming here to learn. Well, maybe me to teach, but you come here to learn, so you can improve with time more and more, because a lot of those things are, well, not say easily addressable, but they're not kind of core. Maybe it's just a matter of practice. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is something that Akshay said. It's the focus of the conversation. I think it was a bit defocused. And when I say defocused, there were 3 elements. One element was the answer was the question. I think the question was actually ask a question about your role in the team or something like that. And you talked for a couple of minutes, and some portion of it was not around the question. I think it's important to remember what is the question that you're being asked. The reason for this is because the person on the other side wants to get their signals. And as you talk more and interview as a cap time, you're much more likely to miss the opportunity to provide them with the signals. And remember, if they don't get their signals, you don't get hired. So focus, I would say one tip maybe is either memorize or just write down, if it's something like this, just what was the question? And just kind of snap a look into this just to make sure that you're actually answering the question. I felt like at some of the questions it wasn't exactly there. Again, it's a form of, it's just a habit. I sometimes don't answer the question, but again, there is time and place for everything. And I think an interview is a time to answer the question. The second thing is talking points. When you step into this interview, you should know that, as Akshay mentioned, there is a mismatch or some mismatch, at least on the ETL side. So what politicians do when they enter an interview, and they have like no idea what they're gonna get asked and who's the interviewer or what's gonna happen. They have a page of talking points. They have 4 or 5 page talking points. So for example, one of those talking points could be why you think you should be a backend engineer. And every time that somebody is asking you, hey, you don't have the experience of a backend engineer, some people will say that kind of direct, like Akshay, and some people will kind of hint on that. Oh, I don't see that you. But you have your talking point. And even if they don't ask, it's the elephant in the room. You have your talking point. So make sure when you go to an interview, if there is like those 3, 4, 5 things that somehow need to come, you try somewhere. It's like I have a friend that has this, it's kind of like a joke. How do you know that he's a pilot? You always tell it in the first 5 minutes of conversation. So he has like this talking point that he was just going to say, no matter what you're going to talk about, you can talk about the weather or something. So that's kind of the things like we talking point. And a talking point here, going back to what Akshay said, is come prepared with why you are a fit for this backend. So that's one thing. A second thing, and by the way, it's important when you're looking at the interviewer to read their body language. I think Akshay body language is more than others. I think he tried to stop you a couple of times at your first answer.
I can't see his face because I was on a different monitor. So I was.
Okay. He was also making noises.
Okay. I didn't hear that.
He was also making noises. He was trying to, trying to show and making noises. You can see that in the recording, by the way.
Okay.
So, and you'll see the recording.
I don't think he'll see it because when I'm on a different screen, I don't see your guys' photos, your guys' faces.
He was also making noises, but that's okay. So in any case, it's important to see the person from the other side and just kind of read like if you are answering the question or if you're like over time. So I think that's the thing. One more thing is when you're mentioning ETL, many people might not consider ETL as a high-level engineering complexity. So if you've done something complex, again, talking point, you want to talk about that. Maybe you've done something complicated. Maybe you don't. Maybe it was complex. Maybe it wasn't. But know it's there. Know that issue is there and come ready for these things when they ask you about this experience, right? One of the things that I mentioned, it's quite good idea to highlight maybe the complexity of the problem you dealt with and the fact that you make intelligent choices as part of it. Right. One more thing is in the end when he asks you about, have you developed a feature from the start, something like that. So you started, yes, develop a feature, of course. The thing is that this type of question is not actually about the feature and the names of those features, which you listed. Because again, he doesn't really know your product and he doesn't really care about that that much. He wants to understand how you develop a feature. So when somebody's asking if you develop a feature, they're not asking for a list of this feature. They're asking, tell me the steps for you to develop a feature. And I think that that's important to understand. You kind of squeeze it just in the end when I thought you're not going to say anything about it, you squeezed it. But I think it's important to understand the person from the other side as why they ask this and what was behind it. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so now that we are done with those with the interviews, and that's an experience of about 1 hour. How do you feel it's different when you're in the interviewee side and the interviewer side? Because most of us, not most of us, many people think it's about getting interviewed. How do you think getting interviewed maybe changes a bit your perspective? As I assume this is maybe, at least for a resume question, that's the first time you ever done it. We'll start with you, Akshay.
Sure. I feel this experience has definitely changed my perspective about interviews. I've always thought there is a job description and the interviewer must be looking at the job description and always looking at the resume and they then asking questions to candidates. But I think this approach is very unique in its own way. We have signals that we always look for in the candidate, and based on that, the interviewer is asking questions. So it's very important that to understand the question and the main motive behind the question, why the question is asked by the interviewer, and to have crisp and short and sweet answers. I think that's the key. Answer exactly what the interviewer is expecting me or us to answer. I think that was a key takeaway from this session. Also, I can basically think from the point of an interviewer that I can basically draw some sort of metric or something based on the job description, like this is for a backend developer role, this is for a full stack role, or maybe a UI developer role. So, excuse me. So, what kind of metric I can draw, and maybe the high value signals the interviewer might be looking for. So I would emphasize my talk on that. Like he might be looking for something with REST APIs a lot, or he's talking about like Node.js. I should be talking more about Node.js, or something like a teamwork, because this is a huge team that he's looking into for. So I think these are the key things I learned, and I'm taking away from this session today. I think that was great. Thank you so much, Professor.
Sure. Sonal, what looks different from being an interviewer and being an interviewee? I think you're the bravest one in class. You've done it twice out of 2 of those sessions that we've done. So you have perspective from both sessions. How do you feel it maybe teaches you something new?
I think it really opens my eyes into the signals I should be looking for that I think the interviewer is looking for. So, for example, when Akshay asked, have I developed any features for Impala, I took that question literally. And I said, yes, these are the features names. And now I understand the signal was actually that he was looking for is, how did I approach taking ownership of my features and accomplish that? So knowing that sometimes the interviewer may ask a question, but they just phrased it differently. So I need to know deep down, what is he truly looking for, so that I could answer in that perspective. Because I may not get a chance where he says, can you describe your process of developing? It was probably just, have you developed any features? Can you tell me about that? So that was one interesting perspective that I picked up on. And the other one is sharing how I could focus my talking points, particularly to the backend engineer role. So knowing that, like, I know what I've done as working with Impala, but now I need to share that to this interviewer. And it's that perspective that, what does backend engineer mean? So if I'm working with ETL and I know that there are more components involved that are in backend development, but I don't highlight those, in his mind, ETL may be completely different because he doesn't know the architecture of Impala involved. And I didn't go into much details of how our architecture supports the components of backend development, with adding support for ETL migration. So focusing that into that role that I'm applying for, so that he or she knows that I have that experience, that's important. So making sure that as I'm talking, the vocabulary is clear, like not clear, but like whatever it is in his mind, I should keep in my mind and focus my talking points to communicate that across to him.
Yes, in the end, you create an image of you in the interviewer mind. They don't really care about the resume per se, like they're not working in those companies. They work in their company and have their own projects. So they try to say, okay, would you fit there? And I think that another thing I would suggest to you, and that's for both of you, because you both had a similar comment, you can see that again. I know it's a bit cringy, but you can see the video again. See the question that you ask and see how you respond, and ask yourself, did I respond correctly to the question, or not even correctly, like wordsmith it, like did I even answer the question? So I think that once you will see that, I think it'd be quite eye-opening. And I highly recommend this to people. Personally, I don't do it because it's too cringy for me. But if you're braver than me, then it might be very useful. Cool.
Sure.
Any last thoughts before we finish?
No, I just want to thank both of you for your time. It's wonderful. I have definitely learned something today. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Sonal and Akshay, and good luck with everything that you do. And I'll see you on class on Monday.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.